Well, hello, Internet. Welcome back. I'm joined this evening with somebody who's very cold in the northeastern United States, Mr. Phil Strader from SIG USA. Phil, how are you this evening?
Good, thank you.
All right. I think some of my audience will have a good feeling for who you are. They'll know you through your USPSA days. But for those of you who don't, could you introduce yourself and what you do for SIG Sauer?
As you mentioned, it's my name is Phil Strader, and as of just about a week and a half ago, I am the director of firearms product management. But before that, I was the product manager for our polymer pistol line, 320, 365, that kind of thing.
So the new P320 carry, that's on you now too, huh?
Well, yeah, it's being handled by our classic SAO product manager, but yeah, he now reports to me, so I get to enjoy that launch that we had today or yesterday. Yeah, 210. We launched a 210 on 210.
Well, congratulations! I wasn't aware of the title change. That's awesome.
Thank you.
What you didn't mention, and I'll mention for you, is that Phil is also a longtime Grandmaster national champion and still very active and avid competitor in USPSA. I looked up the stats last year. You were number 7 in the nation in both carry optics and production divisions last year. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I was starting a trend there. I was 7th in the first nationals I shot, and then 7th at carry optics. Actually, I was pretty happy with that because that was a tough crowd.
That was a stacked division this year.
Yeah,
they were,
incredible, the talent that was there. And when I was actually shot limited right after, and I was literally just hovering around 6th or 7th place, and I jinxed myself. And I was like, man, if I finish 7th again, 7th at 3 nationals in a row, that's going to be weird. And of course, the last position of the last stage of the last day, I had a major malfunction and put me from, by not thinking would have put me 6th or really close to 7th, and it bumped me all the way down to 9th. So yeah, I mean, I've managed top 10 at all the nationals this year, and yeah, so I did pretty well this year. Last year, I can't complain. Hopefully this year will be even better. We'll see.
And for the peanut gallery, if you're enjoying competing in carry optics division in USPSA, this is the man that you have to thank. This was your brainchild. So I'll just start the conversation with, how were you so visionary? Back in 2015 or whatever, when they first started the discussions about it as being a provisional division, it had a ton of resistance, but you stayed the course, and look at it now.
Right. Well, there was no arguing with the direction the market was headed. And at the time, I had a pretty good, I mean, the company I worked for wasn't exactly what you would call a pistol company. I worked for Remington while I was president of USPSA, because it used to be a part-time position. So I had seen a lot of trending towards that direction with slide-mounted optics, and it wasn't not like it is now, obviously, but it was starting to move that way, and it was only a matter of time. We'd seen the same trend happen back in the day when I started shooting multi-gun. Everyone just started transitioning over to the red dot optic. When I was a law enforcement trainer, we were petitioning our hierarchy and our leadership to say, look, we really need red dot optics on these rifles, because it makes the shooting so much less complicated for less than experienced shooters. And that was just a general transition of where that platform went. And it was a guess to a degree, but it was a very, very educated guess that slide mounted optics on pistols would start trending, simply because they just make shooting, for newer shooters and for somewhat experienced shooters, they make it so much easier to make difficult shots. It doesn't necessarily make the shooting sport itself easier, but from a person to take someone out on a range and teach them how to shoot a pistol, if you do it with an iron sight gun versus a gun with a red dot on it, the learning curve is just way steeper with the optics. So I kind of saw it coming, and the board agreed. Some would say reluctantly, but they agreed. I pushed it, and it happened. Now, initially, the carry optics division was, as the name implied, initially intended for carry pistols, true, carry guns. And
There's a 35-ounce weight limit originally, so
35-ounce weight limit, which basically, the way it was sort of calculated was, we knew 32 ounces was your general polymer pistol. I mean, we kind of wanted to. I sort of wanted to keep it in the polymer pistol lineup to make it affordable, to make it, and some may argue that, and I try to keep it at 10 rounds, and some would argue that was not the right way to go. Some thought it was, some thought it wasn't. But here's the thing, whether you think that or not, if you tell a shooting public that, hey, we're not going to make you shoot 10 rounds, we're going to give you 23, no one's really going to complain. No one complains when you give them more stuff.
Yeah.
They usually just complain if you tell them you can't do this anymore or you restrict it. So anytime you give them more weight, more ammo, of course everyone's going to be on board. And if they were to say, hey, we're going to start letting you put mag wells on carry optics guns, people would probably bitch that the rules are being changed too quick, but everyone would put a freaking mag well on their carry optics gun and they would just keep doing it. So as long as you keep giving people things, they'll keep taking them, even if it's not in the desired direction that division. I wanted to see that division go.
Yeah,
it's been very popular, and I can't argue with the success of it. So good for them for updating the division and making it turning into something even better than what I had envisioned. So that's awesome.
So taking kind of the approach of sort of your vision on that, let's drop back, because you originally came on board. You were the guy who launched the P320 back in the day with the stealth team SIG, if you will, and introducing the product. And it was an evolution, if I recall, of the P250. At least the grip modules were the same, which I believe was an internal hammer fired, and you switched it over to a striker fire. Is that barking up the right tree?
I'd love to take credit for that. It actually, the timeline was the 250 was released. If I get my timeline here right, I saw one of the very first P250s before they were announced and before they became out in the open around 2009 when I was at the U.S. Shooting Academy. I had two friends that worked there. The director of training at the time, Adam Pancho, and I think the one of the lead product managers was a guy named Jeff Creamer. And I'd known them both for a while, and they came to the academy and sat down with me and Mike Seeklander and showed us this new SIG conceptual pistol they'd come up with. And it was a P250. And what it was basically a polymer hammer-fired polymer double action only pistol. And it didn't, on paper, it didn't sound terribly exciting. There wasn't a lot of pull. It wasn't a lot of drive to make a double action hammer fired gun. The striker market had been in full swing. Glock was owning the market. Striker fired guns were very, very popular because of their ease of use, right? But they showed me this thing, and they showed me how it took apart, and the fire control unit came out. And the first question Mike and I asked was, does it come in a striker fired version? Because it was the most innovative thing I'd ever seen. As far as, you could the frame out and literally build anything you wanted around it. It was just a brilliant concept. I loved it. So fast forward to 2014 at the SHOT Show. While I was working for Remington, I was trying to convince our engineers to build something similar to the P250 before that. Say, look, this is they have the best idea going. And this is for the MHS contract. The SIG has it down. The problem is they don't make a striker fired version of it. So I was trying to work with our engineers to come up with a striker fired version of the P250. And lo and behold, I'm walking around the SHOT Show with our CEO, and there's the SIG P320. And I'm like, what is a P320? And I could look at the gun and go, oh boy, I think that's a striker fired version of what we looked at. And sure enough, it was. And, at that point, I didn't have the heart to tell my leadership at Remington, that's pretty much what we wanted to do. And you can forget it, because I'm sure they're probably 5 years down the road perfecting this thing. And that's kind of happened in 2014. And now fast forward another 2 years, I get hired by SIG, and the 320's barely, just over a year old. At that point, when I got hired as the polymer pistol product manager, my goal was for the 320 was to, I guess you could say, optimize it, which might probably going to lead into some of your questions you'll have later. But my goal was to optimize it for not so much the competitive shooter, but to a degree, that's what it was for, to make the gun better. And the 320 was already so good, but there were things that could have been done there that we did to the gun that could enhance it, make it even better, make it more ideal for, and I'll use the term competitive shooter, but when I say that, I don't mean people who only shoot competition. Because let's face it, people who shoot, general practitioners who go to the range and shoot, they want the same things that competitive shooters want. They want a gun that shoots better, that feels better, that's more accurate, that recoils less, that feels better in their hand, that has a better trigger. We all want the same things. We just want it because it's more practical and helps us perform better in a competitive environment. Regular shooters want it just because they just want to enjoy themselves at the range. So honestly, we all want the same thing. So that was the goal, was to create a new level of 320 that would better address that market.
And that was the X5?
That was the X series, right? Started with the X carry and the X5. We changed the slide serrations. We changed the way the sight slides were set up. We actually made them optic ready automatically right out of the box, so we could accommodate this new division that had, was going on for carry optics. And of course,
I think you guys were the first manufacturer to actually purposely mill a slide for a specific footprint optic, because up to that point, I believe everyone was using plates, and you were the first guys to actually no, it's better if the screws can bite steel and you don't have a stupid little warped steel plate or an aluminum plate that'll strip threads.
You're correct. In fact, we were the first company to actually offer an integrated and included optic with the gun from the factory. The 320 RX is what they called it.
I remember,
the first time that had been offered by.
It was only like $750 originally when it came out too. I mean, it was a heck of a value back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, 320s were selling for, and they still are, but a standard 320 was selling for $499, and add an optic to it, and our cost was, we were able to charge around $250, $300 for the optic. So yeah, it was a pretty good deal, and we were the pioneers to do that, and now of course everyone's doing it, but it's still showing that I think we're having to. Obviously, SIG's always trying to stay ahead of the market to a degree. And, the way to do that, I thought, and I think we were right, was to create this X series line of 320s. And now everything we make, with the exception of the commercial version of the M17 and M18, are based around X series features, whether it be the new X series grip module, or the aluminum X series grip, or the tungsten X series grip. That's all kind of foundationally built around this realization that we could make a 320 shoot like a competition pistol, which is ideally what people want anyway. I mean, look at every 1911 in the market. 1911s didn't always look like that until competitive shooters changed them. So
yeah, it's funny too, because all the 1911s now brag about a lowered and flared ejection port, like it's not a standard feature all of a sudden. And like back in the day, it was like a upgraded feature, but now it's just the way that they're made.
Right.
So
and because a bunch of guys took a grinder and some weld and welded on a little extension to the thumb safety, and welded some additions to their beaver tail, and then all of a sudden it just becomes standard equipment, because again, it makes the gun shoot better. So if it's good enough for us, it's good enough for everyone else.
For sure. So I'm curious, since you guys are in, is it which I always get it mixed up. You guys are in which state? Live Free or Die state? Which, New Hampshire?
New Hampshire, right?
That's right. But SIG Electro Optics, I believe, is in the Pacific Northwest.
Correct. They're outside of Portland, Oregon.
So how much interplay is there between you guys when you guys are talking about pistols and they're talking about optics? I mean, I got to believe that you guys are in constant communication, but I'll let you answer the question.
Well, we are. There's always a challenge. I mean, they operate independently to a degree, but obviously, when we're building products, it behooves us to make them compatible and work with our optics, because we're an optics company, right? So we're not going to sell a gun that, if we sold a gun equipped with an optic, it's going to be ours. So,
right.
There's bumps. There's always bumps in the road, but they're small bumps. Footprints and footprint configurations and what we would like to see. But we have managed to have a very cohesive bond between the optics and the firearms, especially handguns, because we're making things like the 320 Max, and we're integrating optics into a lot of our other pistols. We have a complete Romeo Zero, a Romeo Zero, and a Romeo Pro family of guns that come optic equipped. So yeah, we have a lot of input, and when we have guns we want to test, obviously part of that test involves testing with an optic. And when they're developing optics that they want to hold up to certain things, we send them guns so they can test them on our guns. So that what makes it unique is, they're a company that is SIG branded, but that doesn't mean we only want to see SIG branded optics on our pistols. We want to see them on all pistols. So I think they're starting to come around, and they're starting to actually make sights that will accommodate other platforms. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next year with that, because they're actually now starting to become, trying to build that reputation up of saying, okay, this is now a very real, viable option as an optic. Even if you're not shooting a SIG, if you're shooting a CZ or a Glock or whatever the case may be, this is now a very viable choice. So
I'm in the process of editing my Romeo 1 Pro review. And I'm convinced. I mean, I have 3 Delta Point Pros, and I've got 2 now Romeo 1 Pros, and I'm actually convinced that that's the better optic for that footprint of optic now. Like, that is, in my mind, the default optic for that choice, just because the glass is so clear and the emitter is so crisp. Like, I have an astigmatism and it doesn't flare up near as bad, but the glass also doesn't distort. Like,
right,
I'm not blowing smoke. Like, when I don't like something, I'll say I don't like it. But
yeah. I'm a fan of Delta Points. I used to shoot one, and as of late I have, and I buy other optics. I buy other companies' optics
Sure.
to play with them. I don't shoot them. I don't compete with them, obviously, but I do have a lot of them. And the last 2 Delta Points that I got, they were not as robust as the original one I got. I don't understand. I'm not sure what happened. I've heard that they're now back to where they were. I don't know. I haven't gotten a new one. The last one I had was a gazillion years old, and I got 2 more about a year and a half ago, and those did not hold up at all. I have 2 RMRs. They both are tanks, but they're horrible optics.
Yeah, they're not great for sport shooting. Not very good.
No, they're the worst. But they're very tough. I mean, everything. I've got a doctor. I've still got an original doctor on one of my Steel Challenge guns, and that optic still runs like it's perfect. It's just really, really tiny, but it's great. So I truly believe in our optics. I use a Romeo 3 XL. And I was using an older prototype model for 2-3 years, and it finally went out on me. But that was to be expected. And now I've got a new one, an actual production model one, and so far I've been really happy with it. I shot it at Carry Optics Nationals last year, and of course I'll be shooting it after the single stack Nationals is over in May. I'll be moving back to Carry Optics until that Nationals is over, and then in production, and then I'm done again till 2023.
So you started to touch on it. I wanted to ask, because you're in a unique position, since you are a anointed, if you will, competitive shooter. You have obviously an inside mind inside track into the mind of what competitive shooters want. obviously you're not just making guns to sell to competitive shooters, because that niche is like this big, and the American gun buying public, it would fill the whole room basically.
Right.
So, but I mean, you touched on it, that the feature set that people want is, an easy shooting gun. But are you seeing kind of a convergence? Because I feel like a lot of the features that we require as competitive shooters are now just kind of increasingly the standard. Is that kind of what you guys are seeing? And are they
Absolutely.
truly kind of the test bed for R&D?
No. So I'll give you a little history on one of the guns we developed. So the X5, the 320 X5 Legion, okay, was a pistol that, in complete transparency, was designed as a USPSA and IDPA production ESP, SSP, and even carry optics gun. That's what they were designed to do. The weight was specifically designed to be 43.5 ounces, 43 if you take off the mag well for SSP, IDPA, for you IDPA shooters out there, and 43 if you take the weight out and leave the mag well on for ESP shooters. So the gun was very, very specifically derived, of course, around the original X5, but the technology, the new technology we used, of course, was the tungsten grip module. Now, from a practical standpoint, making a pistol that heavy, granted using very cool technology between, of a tungsten polymer blend, which you've hit on in a lot of your videos, was completely impractical for a gun to own as a regular person. A, it's really expensive, and B, it's just heavy. But heavy guns mean less recoil. And we've sold more X5 Legions than there are competitive shooters in all the sports combined. So that was to me, it was a confirmation or an affirmation of what I thought I already knew, is shooters want what competitive shooters want. They want the same thing. They just want a gun that shoots better, is more controllable, is more forgiving to shoot on a range, something you can put a lot of rounds on. So CZ noticed the same thing. I mean, their Shadow 2 is a hugely popular pistol in USPSA, obviously in production.
Oh, yeah.
But they're selling a lot more Shadow 2s than there are competitive shooters.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like every dentist and accountant across the country likes to have at least one to post on Facebook.
I think the advantage for us are CZ has people within that company that are in similar positions as mine was, that have some notion of what a competitive shooter would like to see, i.e., your general shooter. And SIG is somewhat in the same boat with me being in the position I was in for polymer, which is, I think, why we may have seen this transition from the P320 being a really great direct competitor with the Glock 17 and a duty type pistol, to now, when you think 320, at least when a lot of people think 320 now, they're thinking, custom aluminum X grips and guns that you haven't seen yet that will be even more impactful to come. And I think people are starting to see that the 320 isn't just and I like to use this as an example, it's just not a Glock 17 anymore. It's an actual gun that can be used for everything, a duty gun, and the X series features make it even more desirable. And now you've got this tungsten material that makes the guns even heavier and flatter to shoot. So I think it's trended in that direction. In fact, I know that a very large majority of the 320s we sell are premium line guns, X series, AXG, that kind of thing. Very few standard 320s anymore.
You guys people have been crying for just call it a metal framed Glock for forever. And right around the same time, you guys and Walter both kind of hit the market with effectively, metal alloy striker guns. And yours has more traditional looking grips. And I think that's at least to me, like the classic 226 and like swapping out the grips, like that's a very kind of iconic thing. And the price point, while it is a premium price point, is still reachable. I mean, it's not that much more than a traditional pistol, but then the fact that you can totally transform it with grips, I really do think it is just kind of, I mean, it's just like people with their ARs. They can buy presents for their AR, so they do. And the whole modular concept, because, I mean, I've got another video coming up where I'm going to be looking at the new Spectre Comp, but I'm going to build up my 365 XL into being a 365X with a threaded barrel and a traditional comp to compare against it. And I can order all the parts straight to my door. I don't have to go buy a new pistol or anything. I can just order it and they show up at my house.
Yeah, but it is. It's nice.
And that was a feature. I mean, I'll be honest. I was not a P320 fan when they first came out. I was like, I don't know about all this. It's just, who needs it? If I need another gun, I'll just buy another gun. I don't need the module. But then once you get used to being able to buy grip modules, and if you just buy one and it was a $40 grip module, it's like you're out $40. It's not that big a deal. And you can totally change it. I mean, it's actually pretty cool.
My production gun, carry optics gun, and my limited prototype gun are the same gun.
You just pull the fire control unit and swap frames or barrels or uppers or whatever.
Swap uppers, really. Swap uppers, take off a magwell, and I got the same gun. I can go to a multi-divisional nationals with one handgun and a few parts, and I'm good. So
and the way that the fire control units are built, I imagine it's not likely that you're gonna. I mean, if you experience a breakage, it's probably not going to be with the fire control unit. It's probably your optic or something like that goes down, and not necessarily the gun. Yeah.
Every year, I've seen. I haven't had this happen. I don't shoot enough to have any kind of real breakages, but some of the people who are putting many thousands, tens of thousands of rounds on their guns, I've seen some of the trigger return spring. I've seen some of those break every now and then, but they're almost every single time they're a competition model with thinner gauged wire. But as far as a duty, like a standard factory setup, almost impossible to break. I run mine factory, so I just don't want to take the chance. Only thing I change is the two sear springs. They're lighter, but that's everything else I run is completely stock because I'm just not willing to take the chances of. I just don't want a stock production. I don't want anything other than a stock gun because I just don't trust it. I've learned that lesson through shooting other.
Everybody, I think, learns that lesson at one point in time.
Eventually.
It's just like there's a threshold for a good enough trigger, and you just have to get it to that threshold and leave it alone. You don't have to have the best trigger. You just need good enough, and that's fine.
Yeah, that prototype thing bit me at the limited nationals, but I didn't have much of a choice there. I was, we just don't make a 40 cal high capacity limited competitive gun yet, so.
Well, that's actually a nice segue because I asked my patrons, and I've seen a couple comments in chat. 10 millimeter, is that ever going to be a thing on the P320? You probably can't tell me if it is.
Yeah, you know what? I'll meet you afterwards. We'll talk about it. Look, that's the most popular question we get. Any 320 video we submit, any 320 product we come out with, that is the one big question we get about that is a 320 and 10 millimeter. And, there's a lot of other companies that are doing it. Glock's been doing it for a long time. XD was the next up with their XD 10 millimeter. Now Smith & Wesson is offering a 10 millimeter because I think a lot of these companies are starting to see, that popularity of that round. And it's a great round. It's certainly something that we have not turned a blind eye to. We've noticed the trend. And if we were to do a 10 millimeter gun, one thing that makes us a little bit different than the other gun companies is the way we test product. So if we were to, let's say, launch a 10 millimeter in the summer of this year, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I'm just using that as a rhetorical. If that were a thing, that means that gun would have started testing summer of last year. So we're a little bit more careful to not rush products to the marketplace because there's a standard that we hold ourselves to that's pretty unrealistic. So
Yeah, you want to share what that standard was? We had a phone call the other day, and you were telling me the failure count that you guys require out of the guns, and I was pretty shocked by it.
yeah, so if you take a case of ammo, actually no, check that. If you buy our 320, if you buy 2 cases of ammo, 2,000 rounds, if you have more than one failure, that means a class 1 failure, just a simple fail to extract, fail to feed, anything silly that you could just do this to and fix, or maybe this to and fix it, it's a fail. Our MRBS rate is that low or that high.
MRBS is mean rounds between stoppage.
Mean rounds between stoppage, yeah. It's just it's out of control. But that's the standard we're held to. I mean, we did a test for a government agency where we shot 60,000 rounds out of 60,000 rounds. No, yeah, 60. The first round of test was 60,000 rounds out of 6 guns, and we had 0 malfunctions, not one malfunction.
What is the maintenance schedule on that? Is it 2,000 rounds without re-oiling, or is it like all at once?
No, there was a regulated cleaning schedule. I think we shot in. I think we shot every 500 rounds. We did a standard cleaning, and in every 2,000, I think we were allowed to do a detailed cleaning. So there's very mandated, regulated cleaning schedules, and it's not just us; it's any competitor that's shooting that. But when this was basically it's an internal validation after award, and it was so silly, and the evaluators were they just couldn't believe it. They were watching, and they were like, "This can't be real." We were just shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting. Now, granted, we had good shooters up there. We didn't have limp wristers and that kind of thing. It was me and Steve Gilchrist and a few of our Steve Gilchrist. Sorry, I call him Gilchrist because it's funny. He's our director of training. He's a great shooter. And we had some of our better shooters on the line, not like pros, except for maybe me, but just our standard run-of-the-mill guys who knew how to shoot. And the evaluators just couldn't believe that we had gotten that far in the test without a malfunction, without even one malfunction. And we were allowed, I think their MRBS was 1,000. Like every 1,000 rounds, you could have one, class 1 malfunction, which is a simple malfunction. So it got so silly. By the end of this, we got to the end of the test, we had gotten that through 59,850 rounds per gun or something, or for the test. And so, as a joke, we all got together, including the evaluators, because our engineer, our lead engineer, was just beside himself. He was nervous. He kept getting more nervous as the test was going on. So we all conspired, and we actually all faked malfunctions all at the same time. And we raised our hand. The evaluators came over, started writing things down. They were all in on it just to mess with our lead engineer on the project. So that's how comical it became. So. The guns, like I said, we hold them to an extremely ridiculous rate of function, and a lot of people just don't know that. We test and we have to, because name another company who develops handguns and rifles and ammunition and suppressors and optics and bolt guns, machine guns. We're in every facet of the shooting industry, and so there's always going to be a spotlight on us, so we have to be kind of deliberate on how we test things and how we do it. And if it means let's say a 10 millimeter, if we miss, if we're not first to the finish line, it's not awesome. I mean, we were first to the finish line easily first with the 365. But
that's a great point. That was a really disruptive gun.
That was it. That gun was designed to disrupt the market. And if we come out with a 10 millimeter, then I can proudly and confidently say that if we do, it will be the best 10 millimeter in that genre, that polymer pistol genre. So,
because the 365 legitimately redefined what a concealed carry gun was.
Of course, and that was the goal. We knew we had something special when we did that.
Yeah. And to that point, building on that, because you just released the Spectre Comp, and that's actually really interesting because I'm thinking with my USPSA kind of visionary hat now. So for the people who haven't been following the press releases or whatever, the P365 XL Spectre Comp has an integral compensator that you accomplish through having a XL length slide with a 365 length barrel, and there's internal baffles inside the slide that vent gas up and act as a compensator, but there is no compensator that is attached to the barrel. Did I get that about right?
That is correct.
And that's on a concealed carry gun. I mean, Springfield Armory similarly released the RDP, I guess, about a year ago now, which, I mean, was kind of the more traditional form of what a compensated handgun is. But with the internal, I'm not familiar. I'm not enough of a gun nerd to know of another compensator designed that way. Was that a first, or did you guys draw from something?
It was it was something that came out of here. I don't like to take credit for things, but it made sense to me. STI did a pistol. They called it an expansion chamber, but they had attached it to a barrel. It looked like a compensator that had a sight on the end of it. It was a long time ago. I can't remember what they called it. And I think USPSA actually deemed it a compensator because it was technically an expansion chamber, because the barrel ended before that piece, but there were no comps in it. And I thought to myself, well, why couldn't you just do that, but do it around a slide? And we really wanted to come up with a way to look. The thing about compensators, there's two things about them I don't like. And the Hellcat, I mean, nothing against Springfield or anything, but the Hellcat RDP is a perfect example of the one big problem with compensators. They look ridiculous.
They do look a little silly.
They're horrible looking. They never, even these custom compensator companies, they get close to making it look right, but it always looks like a Franken gun bolt-on mess. And it's 99% of the time it's held on with some kind of hinky set screw that goes into a flat, and they almost always come loose. You're also adding weight to the end of a barrel, and on a small gun like that, adding weight to the end of a barrel is a recipe for disaster. And I know I've shot some of these compensated guns with these little bitty baby single port comps on them, which even the little bitty single port comps, you can get them to 3.7 inches, but the way to do that is you actually have to turn the barrel down and shroud, have a comp with one of these aluminum comp with a shroud on it that goes over the barrel. So by the time you've cut all that material out of the barrel, now your barrel walls are so thin, a stuck bullet would be a major safety problem with some of those guns. Now, if you run it standard threaded barrel, 3.1 inch barrel for, let's say, the Spectre, you're looking at a 3.6 inch overall length when you talk about adding a threaded barrel, component to it. And then you thread on a compensator and you're adding another probably half inch for the comp to extend passing the thread. So now you got well over a 4-inch 365 if you do it the safe way. And I just didn't want that. I mean, we wanted to make sure we had something that was compatible with 365 XL holsters and not unsafe, and something that wouldn't come loose. And the compensator, or the slide integrated compensator was the answer to that. And it works. And that was the big thing. Was I wasn't sure if it was going to work. I kind of thought it would. I'm not the smartest guy, but it seemed to me that it would work. And before we even went to through the engineering validation and that kind of thing, we went to the range and we shot them. We put a 365 XL, and this might be another advantage of me being in the position I'm in with the background I have. I can pick guns up and shoot them and make an honest end user evaluation as to whether or not it's a value or not, right? And so I did that. I took a 365 XL, shot it right next to this compensator idea, and it worked great. And for us, it was cool. It was a cool enough concept to put it in the Spectre lineup, which is our higher end gun. But if this takes off, which we think it is, I mean, it's been extremely popular in the short 10 days it's been launched, and it's getting a lot of really surprisingly good feedback from people who typically don't give us great feedback. And it just can't be. It's hard to argue with the fact that A, it recoils less, B, there's no weird muzzle flash that everyone worried about, and C, it doesn't blow copper out of a compensator or ports in a barrel like it normally would. It doesn't do that. So the only thing that you lose is it's a little bit louder. So you may have a little bit louder gun, but you got a less recoiling compensator technically that will never come loose because it can't. And it's the same size and fits in your regular holster. It's kind of a no-brainer. So if this takes off like we think it may, then that, to me, that opens up the door for a lot of other options. It may be a non-Spectre compensated version one day that's, that people may be willing to spend, a reasonable amount of money for. Let's face it, the Spectre Comp is extremely expensive, but it's
price
also,
point. Right.
It's good, but that's the price point we wanted to compete in. When we built that gun, we were trying to compete against the Terran Tactical modified pistols and the Zev pistols and what will probably eventually be the Wilson pistols, because they just released that grip module for $365, which probably means they're working on a high end, $1,100 365. So we wanted to play in that, and that seemed like a good place to put this not new technology, but new take on an old technology. But we'll see what happens with it. It might open up a lot of doors for us to expand on it, and and luckily with some patent protection, we'll be the only game in town again. Maybe we'll change it again, like it's kind of a 365-esque disruption to the marketplace.
Where my mind is, a USPSA guy kind of first, where my mind initially went was like, okay, that's a really cool idea. What if it becomes a double stack like carry optics, thinking effectively like carry optics? Like, what if this becomes like a pattern of a gun that has widespread adoption? So I was thinking about that through a disruptive lens. Like IDPA's rule set has banned compensated imported slide pistols since forever. But
slide or barrels?
All of them. If you have like the like the Glock 19C, you can use a regular Glock 19 barrel in it, but you can't use the ported barrel.
Right.
So you've effectively created a gun that there isn't a rule against in IDPA. Like, there's not a rule they can point to and say you can't use this gun
it's not a compensator.
It doesn't have a compensator, and it doesn't have a ported barrel. It's a
slide.
Yeah. It's a light and slide. That's all it is. And so, but it acts as a compensator. So I was like, if you made a double stack P320 with that same technology, you could break IDPA, and it just.
If that happens, and I'm not saying it won't, but if that happens, then I'm doing my job, right? It's true. If I can disrupt the market to make a gun that's so much better and shoot so much flatter without breaking those kind of rules, without a compensated barrel, then that means I'm doing my job. If I can make a carry pistol that completely redefines the carry market, that means I'm doing my job. So, and that's what I want. And listen, I'm not done. I am done. I'm now the director. So there's another guy who's going to be taking credit for all the work that I've done the last year, but that's fine.
That's what it's teamwork, right?
Teamwork. But
that's right.
We are not done. We are not done. And that is our mission. That has been the SIG mission, at least since I was hired in 2016, was to come out with products that were disruptive to the market. And there's been other companies, like you mentioned, Walther coming out with the steel striker fired gun. I thought that, I wouldn't say that was disruptive, but it was pretty cool. Not a huge fan of the short grip, but the idea was sound. And by the time they'd done that, we had pretty far down the development road of our AXG grip module. That certainly wasn't the catalyst to do it, but like I said, another project that started a year before we actually launched it. So everything you see that comes out of SIG, you can guarantee that we were working on it, a year or two prior. I mean, the first project I got, new project I got when I came to SIG in 16 was the 365, and in 2018 is when we launched it. So that was a 2-year project because we knew we had something special. We wanted to make sure it was done correctly. And it was. The only downside, obviously, that everyone likes to talk about were the first 1,200 guns we shipped out. We got unlucky with a part that was sourced from a vendor's new factory, and the strikers. We had like a 10% return rate on the first 1,100 guns. So that and that's that's extremely high for us. When typically when we're looking, we usually get anywhere between 0.1 and 0.2% return rate.
Okay, I was going to be my next question is what is a typical return rate on pistols?
Yeah, 365 is our lowest, has our lowest return rate in pistols. It's extremely low, but unfortunately, because like I mentioned, when the spotlight's on you, especially when you've got a gun like that, it's disrupted the market so much that the mission of other companies was to discredit this thing because, like you said, it made every single reasonable carry pistol unreasonable because now it doesn't make sense. The guns,
it's the same size as a 365, but holds half the rounds. Why would I want this thing?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, why would I carry a gun that holds half the rounds when this gun holds twice as many rounds? It's the same size, if not smaller. It feels better. It recoils less. So that was the goal, and that's what happened. And now, of course, we knew, and I told the CEO, and when this happened, I said, look, this is a 1 year head start. In a year, you'll start to see other companies adopt this. And sure enough, I was right. It was a year later that the Hellcat came out. And in another year or so, you started seeing these other, the Glock, I didn't really count the Glock, what was it, the 43X? That was basically just a 19 with 10 mags. I didn't really count that. But, eventually, that
was a weird choice.
Yeah. I don't understand a lot of the things they do. Look, and I'm not bashing them. I'm a huge Glock fan. I own a lot of them, and I used to shoot one exclusively. So I do like the gun. I just don't understand when you have something that works that well for that long, I guess it is kind of hard to change. But yeah, 365, the Spectre Comp, or the different comp technology. Those are two really good examples of what is to come for this year from SIG, because this is just the beginning. I mean, we're just into February, and we've got a lot of pretty interesting stuff coming out that I'm super excited about. That will, I think, will absolutely disrupt the market. Absolutely.
I look forward to if you guys do decide to break the gun games. That'll be really exciting to me because I think it's cool when the games have, because kind of for those of you who don't listen to USPSA neck beard nerd talk, you're gonna have your eyes glaze over, but it's about to happen. So get ready, embrace it, because to me it seems like there's two camps of like we're not done yet with what the handgun is. And to an extent, having somewhat flexible rules where, as the pattern of whatever the pistol of the shooting enthusiast is, we owe it to the shooting community, because that's who plays our game, to accommodate them to an extent within a division.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always make the whole like, well, there's open class and shove it in there. But I mean, you could have said the same thing about a carry optics gun, but at the same time, look what a carry optics gun is now. So to hear you guys pushing that kind of technology and doing those kinds of things is exciting to me, because I think it does open up kind of a new pattern for what an enthusiast gun could be. So the sport will continue to grow, because I mean, there are the people who are basically like, nope, you've got these 5 divisions or whatever, and if it doesn't fit in those 5, that's too bad. This is as good as handguns are ever going to be. This is it.
Right.
And I don't necessarily agree with the people who hold that that take on the rules, but I can certainly appreciate people getting tired of them changing the rules every year. That's that's probably too far in the other direction. But like the effing long slide edge, the long slide edge was, I won't call it innovative necessarily, but they had that kind of integral magwell that just completed the grip. It wasn't really a magwell. It was just an aluminum insert on the grip.
Right.
But USPSA would change their stance on that because I emailed Troy and it's like, it completes the grip. So it's a full-size gun. So it shoots the magazines that it comes with. Are you guys going to define that as a magwell? And he's like, yep, that's what we're doing. And I was like, that's not what it is.
Yeah.
But that's a good idea because that's what gets chewed up on a plastic frame gun is the bottom of the magwell. Like if you reload it a lot, you'll chew it up with the feed lips. Yep. And so that was a good idea in my mind. It's just a shame that the sporting community isn't going to pick it up and run with it.
Yeah. I mean, look, I get production has, there are certain divisions that have gotten a little out of control, and I don't like to place the blame on anyone or any entity or any reason, but the fact of the matter is production production division has not gone down the road that I think it was meant to go down. But with that said, in the position that I was in, my career, my life has revolved around the shooting sports. So I have the luxury of being able to adjust the direction of some of the product line based on silliness. A perfect example was when this ridiculous production weight came out at 59 ounces. And, I understood why they just found the dumbest, heaviest gun that didn't exist anymore, hardly, the Sphinx, I think it was. And then they said, well, we've always allowed people to add 4 ounces, so we'll just find the most unrealistic gun weight we can get and then add 4 ounces to it, i.e. 59 ounces. That or the AO1 LTE from CZ.
Whatever. Yeah, the CZ.
Whatever that custom work, whatever that $3,000 custom production gun, entry-level production gun was. So the shooter in me / product manager in me said, oh, yeah? Well, I don't care if you make it 70 ounces. I'll find a way to make a production gun 58.9 ounces. That was me, the angry me thinking that. And obviously there has to be a level of control that has to be exercised because, I don't have the luxury of some of the smaller gun companies, and I say smaller, they're not small, but some of the gun companies that can focus more of their energy in that market. I have to focus the energy, or SIG has to focus the energy more on the larger market. And at some point, trying to come up with an $1,800 steel production gun doesn't really become a viable option in the commercial market. So, I wasn't able to really go down that road as fast as I wanted to. But I think there are flaws in the way that the rules are sometimes exercised, and there's only so much that the gun industry can do to try to either keep up with it or find new ways to kind of circumvent it. And maybe this is one of them. And I'm not trying to do that. That's not the idea.
That wasn't the
commentator idea. Wasn't to say, I'll get them. I didn't. That literally wasn't it. But the funny thing is, now that you mention it, you're right. If we were able to do some sort of 5-inch compensated gun with like a 4.5-inch barrel, that's pretty cool. But I don't know. Maybe they'll have the SIG rule or something. I don't know. That'd be pretty good.
I hope you do break it, Phil. I'd be excited for it. I got 2 more questions because I realize it's getting late on the East Coast.
Okay.
But one of the things I always like to talk about, especially since I started shooting dots, is the balance of a gun. And it leads into kind of the next thing is when you're shooting a dot gun, length is not as important as it once was, like on an iron-sighted gun.
Mm-hmm.
So have you guys been putting a lot of stock into finding sort of an optimum barrel length and slide weight and sort of like balance point kind of fore and aft in the grip? Because in my mind, there's sort of a golden, based on typical spring weights that are put into pistols and what a 9mm cartridge traditionally is, there's almost like an optimum slide weight where if you get a lot heavier than it, then the slide feels sluggish. The return to zero is slower. But if you get lighter, it starts to feel violent and snappy. Mm-hmm. Have you guys played with that at all, or starting to come up with theories about like what makes the optimum shooting 9mm gun out of different frames and materials?
Not in the way that you're thinking of. Not in the sense of, we're putting people out there with different length guns and having them shoot them and tell us what they're feeling as far as recoil goes. Now, with that said, as of right now, we're not doing it exactly that way. Now, rewind to the infancy of the X5 Legion, and that's exactly what we were doing.
The Pro Cut slides are very similar. I mean, the center of balance on those slides is very low and very to the rear, as opposed to like the slide that came on my Scorpion, say, which is just a traditional, optic cut 320 slide. Like the Pro Cut slide, in my opinion, is nicer shooting, but it weighs about the same as the other one.
It does. It weighs the same. It weighs exactly the same. In fact, we have a weight of let's say a full size slide. What the optimum weight we found is to keep the recoil. Well, I wouldn't say recoil. We found an optimum slide weight to ensure the gun will run optimally, which means, less malfunctions, less fatigue on the shooter. So that's that weight we have found with full size slides in 9mm is usually our focus. Is we want to try to stay around there. That was no different with the X5 slide or the Pro Cut slide. In fact, the X5 slide, the easiest way for us to get there was to cut the lightning cuts on the top of the slide. Those are not decorative. I mean, they look cool, but they were actually made because at 5 inches, we were getting a little over the weight. So, and if you look at a 5-inch X5 slide, you'll see a pocket cut into the underneath of it. To take weight out just wasn't quite enough. So we wanted to get to that ideal weight to make sure we had a pretty balanced pistol. Now with the bull barrel, obviously, we wanted to get as much weight as we could in the barrel, because the more, barrel weight you're able to get into a gun, the less muzzle rise you're going to have. You may get some porpoising, which is again why we went with the grip weight, or the heavier grip, and we put weight in the back of it with the brass grip, was to fight that porpoising. So, I mean, I think
that's a good. I've never heard that term before, but I knew exactly what you were talking about as soon as you said it.
Yeah, it's so a light slide, a very light slide. The idea obviously is to make the slide move as quickly as possible and recover as possible as quick as you can. But what people don't think about is, there's more to it than just the weight of the slide. There's the weight of the barrel and the guide rod. And a lot of people will put, tungsten guide rods on their gun to keep the muzzle flip to a minimum. But too much weight on the nose, too heavy a guide rod, will sometimes cause the recoil of the gun to go in and then dive down and just porpoise up that way. The only way to really counteract it is to add weight to the back. And you can do that through a loaded magazine, but we found a way to do it with the tungsten material. But, honestly, the original X5 Legion had polymer, and we just couldn't quite get the weight balance correctly. And that's where the brass weight came into play in the back of the grip. We actually put it in the back of the plastic grip to start, and it gave us a little bit of more heel weight to control that bouncing. But the TXG grip module, really, that's what kind of finished it off and really gave us an incredibly well-behaved and well-mannered, and non-porpoising pistol. And, I still swear by that gun. We are playing around with a newer version of a 320 that actually will be launching in probably next month. It shoots really well. I'm not sure if it's as good as the X5 Legion. I haven't had as much time behind it as in the current configuration. It will be in it. It probably is, but it'll make more sense when you see it on the market. But yeah, that gun is as well balanced as you could probably get. And there's so much history behind a 5-inch gun. 1911 is a perfect example. And, that's kind of the direction I wanted to take that pistol. I love the 4.7 inch, but, keeping it 5-inch, did two things. It gave me a very reliable weight. It gave me the ability to put a bull barrel in the gun to even cut more muzzle flip down. And it also gave me the ability to maximize the IPSC barrel length, for production.
Yeah. And it keeps it legal. I think in Australia, they have to have a barrel length longer than like 4.89 inches or something like that. Yeah. But that brings up go ahead.
What? No, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it brings up another question, is because I'm not alone in this, but a lot of people have found that in many platforms, they prefer a shorter slide to a traditional 5-inch slide. But the Max, for instance, is built around the 5-inch slide on that. Are you, asking more general things, because I'm sure you have NDAs in place or whatever. Theoretically, would there be value in exploring shorter slide guns that are specifically like dot only guns and screwing around with that? I could just be totally preference. And I guess a caveat to that is the red dot still viewed by SIG as an enthusiast sight, or is it basically, I suspect I know your answer, Phil Strader's answer, but is it going to become the way and not just a way to sight a gun?
I think it will be. I think initially, probably 5 years from now, you're going to start seeing more and more optic only equipped guns. And I think we're kind of seeing that now with a lot of the 365 Romeo Zeros that have come out. They're being released with a red dot and a front sight. And the only reason that front sight's on there is because that's what comes on the slide. It's just part of the exterior
saving
slide.
Machining costs.
Right. It's the same slide. Why change the slide? But that front sight really doesn't do much because it's too short. And the suppressor height sight would be too tall. And we don't make a sight in between. So I think it's trending that way now. And I was actually talking to our president of optics, and he's like, why don't you even put sights? Why do you even put iron sights on guns? And, he's not wrong. Optics are becoming so good that they are nearly that every year that goes by, optics are becoming more and more bulletproof. I think once they become better and better and better, and the public starts to have more faith in those configurations, they'll probably stop wanting iron sights as backups. They probably won't need them. I've had backups on this gun for 3 years, never even needed them. And these batteries last, 22,000 hours or whatever it is. So I think that might be a trend. As far as the barrel length and that kind of thing, I hear what you're saying. Here's the problem: is the shorter you go on barrels, especially, for all pistols, the shorter you go on barrels, the more restrictions you have on the recoil assembly. 4-inch, anything under 4 inches, it is 99% of the time better to have a compound recoil spring, i.e. a 2-piece recoil spring, than it is anything else. And there's just not a lot you can do with those from a factory standpoint. I'm sure there's ways you could cut maybe the outer spring down or the inner spring down. It would take a lot of work. But with the 5-inch version, and this is why we use the Max as a platform for the Legion, because we know that platform works really, really well. It's super reliable. Those bull barrels are very accurate. It was a very easy transition for us, but also because the guide rod systems are so flexible in those. We actually designed the X5 Legion intentionally with a fixed guide rod to use 1911 springs, so the guns could be sprung with a variety of different versions of springs, whether it be Springco or ISMI, or there's a new company that I've been playing with lately. And you can do so much with the spring of the gun and custom tune the gun to your load that I think the solid guide rods just offer you more customization to whatever round you're shooting. In fact, the Legion, as you know, and the Max comes with 2 springs. One for standard loads and one for competition loads. So, but you're right. I mean, a lot of I'll give you an example. The X Carry Legion, which is a tungsten carry length Legion pistol with a threaded barrel, it shoots really flat. Probably as flat as the 5-inch bull barrel gun, which on paper shouldn't make a lot of sense. But with factory ammo, it does shoot really, really well. So compound recoil springs with factory ammo usually will give as good, if not similarly as good, or maybe even a little better than a larger gun with factory ammo. Factory ammo is the key, though. On the competitive side of things, many shooters don't use factory ammo. They like to either buy specialty ammo like Atlanta Arms or ASIM or even Federal Syntec, the heavier bullets with lighter loads, and they can customize their recoil springs, their recoil assemblies from there. But a shorter slide with a compound recoil spring, it does become a little bit more complicated. And Great Guns actually makes a guide rod for the 4.7, but not for the 3.9.
That's interesting. You bring up the X Carry, because that was one that I was considering toying with to see, like, is this the ultimate carry optics gun? Then I bought the AXG Pro, and I was like, I'm satisfied. This is enough. I can put brass grips on this.
The lock grips, yes.
Yeah,
I'm actually thinking about using those. I've got to contact them. I was supposed to call them today. I totally forgot, but I'm actually thinking about putting the brass grips on an AXG grip module and making that my new production / carry optic lower. We'll see. I haven't decided.
I prefer it. I shot it side by side with the Max, and I think that you came up and you've shot enough steel framed and aluminum framed guns. You know the difference in kind of the sensation of recoil through the frame. It feels more predictable, and with how you can weight it with the weights to the rear, and plus the traction with the palm. So
yeah,
I shook your hand once. I believe you do have larger hands.
Yes.
Palm swell grips, it absolutely locks in on your hand. So part of the reason I love the AXG so much is because lock grips are amazing. Like even just the G10 ones with how high up the track, to me, that was the real differentiator on that, is because the grips do extend so high up. Because most polymer guns, the traction stops roughly in line with the mag catch, but like the part of your support hand that resists the turning movement of the frame is right there at the top. And with the AXG, with the grips going all the way to the top, and the new Walther PDPs do that too. They run the traction all the way up right under the bottom of the frame, and it creates so much more locked in feeling. And the fact that that's the way it comes is just Thank you. They did great. Thank you, Phil Strader.
I appreciate it. I wish I could take all the credit, but I can't. But the lock grips, I am going to try them. I do like them. The way they contour, they have like a little shelf that your other hand can sit on, and we'll see. I know Max has been playing with it, and I've just got to get a set of the grips. And
I know a guy if you need it, so I'll contact. I bet you know him too.
I just have to make a call. That's all. I just got to make a call. I just haven't done it yet.
Well, Phil, I've really enjoyed the chat. I think this was really exciting. A lot of people have been piping in, and we kind of ignored all the comments, but I feel like we were on a roll there. But if people want to find you on Instagram, how can they find you? And you've got a YouTube channel now, Phil. Why don't you go ahead and plug that as well?
Well, wow, there are a lot of comments. Dang, how did we miss all these? Oh boy. No.
Some people who know you piped into the chat as well. Some people who know me trolled me as well. But
I'm scared to even think about who that was. Well, I do have an Instagram. It's just at Phil Strader, my name. I do not have a YouTube channel unless you count SIG SAUER.
I was counting SIG SAUER. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, I do a lot of their product videos. I've been doing a lot of work with Gun Talk Media with the Ryan Gresham and Tom, the Guns and Gear TV. So I've been doing some first look videos with them for a lot of the new products we're launching in the next 3 months. So, but yeah, SIG SAUER is the best way to see what's coming out. And if people who subscribe to the channel will get all of our our videos first, and of course it's like every other YouTube channel, notifications and ringing the bells and all that. But yeah, I my wife has been trying to convince me to start a YouTube channel, but I don't know how I'd ever have the time to do it. So
You're a
yeah,
pretty busy
Instagram's
guy.
Phil Strader, and Facebook's the same. I think I have my wife set up a page, an athlete page.
One last comment before two comments before we go, because this one gentleman's posted in chat a bunch of times. P365 380, yes, no, maybe.
Yes. We actually sort of announced that gun at the virtual SHOT Show last year, and it was the general idea was going to be a standard 365 and 380. When we launched it there, we knew we weren't quite ready to build them, but we needed something kind of cool to show at the SHOT Show. And at that time, our philosophy was, if we're close to launch, let's just show it to them. Let's just tease it, because teasing is really good for marketing. Well, we teased it, we started testing it, and actually everything went pretty good until we had initially an issue with gun failing to go into battery. It only happened a few times, and then we decided, maybe we should, we're marketing this gun. If we do a 380, we're going to be marketing it to females, people with smaller hands, with weaker hands, maybe. So we started bringing in weaker shooters, weaker as far as their technique was not as good, their grips weren't as strong, their wrists weren't as locked, and we found a lot of problems. We found a lot of failing feeds and a lot of failing to go into batteries. And we're like, wow, we really need to kind of take another look at how we test guns for this market, So we kind of went back to the drawing board to a degree. And then, of course, that's when that's 2021 is when things went absolutely insane in the gun market, and we couldn't make what we had on order. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense to launch another medium margin pistol that we couldn't make when we couldn't make regular 9mm. So it actually was a blessing in disguise that we found this problem, then realized, we wouldn't have launched it anyway, but that was kind of a blessing that, well, now we actually have time to bring all these really challenged shooters. I don't want to say bad, because they just didn't hold the guns the way I hold them, or you hold them maybe, and put them on the range, and we work the bugs out with them shooting them until they can't make them mess up. And it actually worked out great. Now, not only do we have a 380 that'll, not yet, but we will be launching very, very soon. We'll have a 380 that is not a disposable gun, like half the 380s that are out there. If you look at a lot of them, they're really not sturdy, I guess you could say, is a nice way of putting it. So the idea was to build a gun that would last forever, would be compatible with 365 holsters for 99.9% of them. And so that's been the goal. And, it's, we're getting really close. I would say for your viewers and your listeners, keep your eyes open in the next week or so, and you'll probably see some of the details. In fact, we're getting pretty close. So yes,
awesome.
It's a long way to answer a question. Sorry, but anyway.
And this one is more suiting my own needs, because open is the one true division and the very best division. Is SIG going to be making an open gun for Max to run around with?
Look, there's
like 5,000 people in the world who care about open guns.
Well, no, you say that, but again, how many people who don't know anything about competition would love to grab an open gun with a frame mounted optic and a multi-port comp and go to the range and shoot it, because it shoots awesome. It's cool to look at. It's like a fancy car. How many people buy a Corvette, C8 Corvette, and never take it on the track? So
I have a coworker at my last company that when I started shooting open, he thought it was so awesome. He went out and bought a full-on open gun just because he thought it was awesome. And I don't even think he shot it yet. He got it like 6 months ago.
No,
it's just never shot it. Like, okay,
it's the reality of it. And that's what I try to tell all my bosses is like, yes, it's a really expensive gun. And because I actually pitched a version of an open gun, and maybe it'll happen. But everything that happens at SIG with as far as new product, it has to be quantified. Business proposals have to be made, and we have to show our leadership that it's going to be worth the testing effort, the months and months and months of ammo and manpower. And I mean, when you break it down, you're talking about a $300,000 to $400,000 investment in time, manpower, and that kind of thing. And we have to be able to show that return on investment. And so I'm not saying no. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that if, let's just say, I was working on it now, today, as I've mentioned before, you won't see it in 2 months.
For a year.
It just doesn't work that way. Yeah, but listen, the worst part is when I work on something, or when we're working on something for a year, and a month before it launches, someone says, what would be a good idea? And they say it, and then 2 weeks later, you launch this product you've been working on it for a freaking year, and they're like, "Hey, listen to me, I knew it." So it's very frustrating. But a 320 open gun, that would be really cool, and I think there's a way we can do it. I know there is. Again, it's just a matter of justifying that. That
Pop's Quest here on YouTube. He's got a YouTube channel. It's just called Pop's Quest. He converted one of his Legions to be a 9 major open gun. So I was like, wow, that's mighty sporty of you, Rob.
That's one way to go. Yeah, 9 majors. 9 majors is 9 major makes everything complicated because it's not a SAMI cartridge. So for a gun company to make a really good open competitive gun, you have to keep in mind that open shooters are going to want to shoot major 9, and that's just not something that can be tested. So if USPSA, are you listening, USPSA? If USPSA were to maybe make major power factor, like, I don't know, SAMI specific, like a plus P 140, 150 power factor, then I think you might see a lot of new and exciting open guns come out that don't cost $5,000. So, I think that would be something that the industry would benefit from, is just to lower the power factor, make it not so silly. 9mm is the way things are going. There's no debating it. There's no denying it. And it'd be neat to see them kind of get up with the times and change things. But, right now, I think they're pretty scared of change after the heat they've taken from all the changes. So, but we'll see. The USPSA, it's going to be a lot of interesting things happening there in the next couple of years, I think.
Well, that's a good note to end it on, giving everybody hope for SIG open guns. So with that, we'll go ahead and end the broadcast. And if you're listening and you want to re-listen, I'll be up on the podcast feed in a couple days with enhanced audio, and we'll take it from there. Phil, I appreciate your time, and we'll end it right there.
My pleasure.